Hello, just wanted to record a video to explain what exactly I did to the song. I was going to take a bunch of pictures and try to type it, but that would take way too long. But for the most part, I just rearranged your rack to better organize for myself. This is how I normally set it up. I have the mix channel over here and any other mixers underneath it, and then I go from left to right with instruments and then just kind of decide where I want to put things. For the most part, you had everything okay. It was just the leveling, like the levels of the different tracks that were off, and just some things needed to be moved around in the audio spectrum as far as like panning goes. So the polysynth over here and the truss, I renamed a few things. So when you open up the file, some names are changed, but if you go back to your original file, you'll see your name. But just change a few names and just like things to help myself make it faster. But didn't really add too much to the instruments. It was mostly just the drums and the side chaining that I had to fix. But for the I'll explain it from the right side. So the synth itself, the one that kind of sits on top of everything, I'll solo that. It didn't really need too much. Just needed the volume adjusted, and I put a little bit of an EQ on it. And then down here, I added the Audiomatic MP3 sound, so it just sounds a little bit crispier or like higher pitched, just kind of like messes with the high end a little bit more to bring it out and add a little bit more color to it. So that's pretty much all I did for that. And then the leveling is all just kind of letting the leads be in front of everything, like the synth itself and then the bells at the end. Those things are, you know, they need to be higher in the level just because they're the main part of a song. It's kind of like the guitar of a song, or like if you're doing like a guitar solo, that the bells come in kind of like a guitar solo, so you want those higher than the rest of the song at that time that they come in. Because if you have everything at the same, you can't really tell what's being accented or added to the song. It all kind of just sounds like it's all at once. So the polysynth got that. The pad, the trust lead from algorithm that you had, just added a simple reverb, just a little bit of reverb to it, because it's kind of like a violin or like a string instrument in the background. It doesn't really have too much oomph to it, or like a lot of like drive to it. It's just kind of in the background, and it doesn't really need to be highlighted too much. So just a little bit of reverb on it. And then dry, it sounds like this. Not much of a difference, but just to help bring it out and put it behind the rest of the instruments. And as far as panning goes, I put... Where is it? Sorry, it's back on the mixer. So the pads and the bells and things like that, like the pad is all the way to the left and the synth is all the way to the right, just so in the headphones and like when you're listening to it, it just sounds like different. Like you're not all listening to it, everything all at the front or all at the back. Because those two sounds, like your two melodies, are literally the exact same thing. So if you have them both playing at the same time, at the same volume, you're not going to be able to tell what's what. So having one to the left and one to the right, it allows the listener to kind of focus in on what sounds are kind of going on at the same time, but they're not too far to the left and the right where they're not in the other headphone. So you can hear both of them, but it sounds together, if that makes sense. The bells, or your Thor here, same thing, just a little bit of echo. Not too much added to it as far as changing. Like I said, it's ahead of everything, or ahead of most of the other mixes. And then to go over here, like I said, it's already panned, or these are already panned, but it's right in the middle. So like I said, it's kind of like a guitar solo, so it being right in the middle, it's the one thing your brain is going to focus on, because I don't know if it's like this for other people. For the most part, I kind of hear everything in the front first, and then whatever's kind of on the sides, I kind of hear later, or like less than the other things. And you know, most of your mix is going to be dead in the middle anyway, so if it's dead in the middle, it's going to be highlighted if you have these two things on the side. So I'll play those at the same time, soloed here. so you kind of hear what it sounds like together. So you have one synth on, you have one sound on the right, one sound on the left, and your bells come in right in the middle here. One thing I did change to the bells, I should say I did change this, in the tool window, I quantized the notes a little bit because it seemed like the timing was a little bit off. So I just highlighted all the notes and then changed it to to quantize about 50%, so it's not too robotic. Quantization just makes the notes like move to a certain value, like whatever value you have set. It'll just move the notes to better match it. So if you're like playing a guitar or a piano and you kind of mess up, it'll move the notes to better match it, so it's not too off, or like it's perfect. Like it'll match it to whatever value you set it to. But if you want it to sound less robotic and, you know, more human sounding, you just adjust how much amount you have on there. So it's just 50% to kind of move it a little bit, and it seems like it helped the rhythm of the melody. Let's go back to the rack. And then your bass over here, your bass was actually fun to mess with. I just changed a few things with the scream, and I didn't want to like affect any of your parameters that you had set up on any of the instruments, so none of this stuff is changed for the most part. Just the volume, if anything, or an EQ adjustment down here. Like I changed the EQ for your pad here, put a little bit of EQ on the polysynth here. And I don't think I touched anything on the Thor here, just added the echo, and then that was just adjusting of levels and stuff. And the bass here did a lot of adjusting here. So the scream was adjusted. The compressor is basically just a limiter. It's not really doing anything. It's just limiting going past this amount. Like I don't want it to go past 0 for the most part. It might clip a little bit, but the there's a limiter on the final mix channel anyway, so it's okay. Then I added a cracked Audiomatic to it to make it a little bit fuzzy on top of what you already had with the scream. I'm not sure if I added the scream or you added the scream, but I just wanted to crinkle it up a little bit so it adjusts the mids, lows, and highs, but it kind of mangles them and adds a little bit of an effect to it. It needed some bass and mid, so the EQ is just adding a little bit of what you can see here, and then the stereo imager is just putting the bass as wide as, not as wide as you can go, but it's wider than the center, like it's a little bit wider than center, but on both sides. So you kind of have this effect going on right here, like with the left and right, but just with the stereo imager. So I could do that into the entire mix, like I could stereo image more things and have, you know, a better spectrum, but for the most part it seemed like this was better to put the main bells directly in the front, like where you have the, or sorry, not where you have, but like this, where you have this coming in at 17, like I wanted that right in the middle, and then putting this on the left and right, but just a little bit on the left and right, and then having everything from the lead and the synth, or sorry, the pad and the synth on the far left and right. It kind of makes everything sound a little bit more complete in a imaging way, I guess you could say, because you have, you know, kind of all the areas of the spectrum in front of you, or in front of your ears, I guess you could say, covered, like far left, far right, mid left, mid right, and directly in the middle with your lead coming in. So we'll listen to that. And yeah, just like volume was added, just a little bit more drive to it, adds a little more bass to it, and yeah. If you don't like any of the effects, obviously feel free to change any of these things. I'm not, you know, permitting, like I'm not demanding you keep all this stuff. It's your song, obviously, but I just felt like that sounded a little bit better, and if that's what the song needs, then hopefully that works for you. The drums were the main thing that needed work to just be connected to like your sidechaining that I saw you had set up. I saw kind of what you were going for. The only thing is most of the splitters that you had set up were going back into themselves, so nothing was really being sidechained. It was mostly like the sound was kind of going in a loop, which I don't know if that might have been why it sounded so like blown out or like flat, just because everything was just being pushed so hard to the limit. But for the most part, just kept the scream the same, or not the same. I did change the scream a little bit just to add a little bit more life to the drums. They sound a little bit flat. The EQ over here is mainly focusing on the high end and just like cutting out a little bit of where you have a snare kind of sound. So like this is boosting it a little bit and then cutting right there just so I don't get too much of a high-pitched annoying noise, and then, you know, boosting the end of it. And then a little bit of a low-end boost to bring out the kick drum. And then the compressor down here is just limiting it again so it doesn't go past 0 to end up blowing out the rest of the side chaining that it's doing. So we'll listen to that. And this is all the, if you do it with it off. So it just really brings some life to the drums and kind of completes the sound of it. Adds a little bit more slap. And I'll show you what the other other sounds sound like without the effects on, so you can kind of get a feel of it. So this one really didn't need too much. And then the pad here. This one I already showed you actually. This is just a little bit of reverb on the bells. Can't talk today, sorry. So it just adds a little bit of like an echo to the background of it. Sorry, I didn't mean to play that other sound at the same time. And over here we got the bass. So bass without any effects. Sorry. And then with the effects. So it just adds a little bit more color and bottom end to it. A lot of bottom end to it. But obviously you can take out anything you don't like. And then the drums we already saw. Or no, I didn't show you the drums, sorry. Drums without the effects. With the effects. Okay, and then the last part was mainly the side chaining that just needed to be fixed, so I'll lower the sequencer here and bring up the mixer. So it was mainly the, you had the dynamics and the parallels a little bit crossed up, so I think they were kind of going into each other. So what I did here is the mixer, or the mix channel for the drums is going into its own mixer. So this has its own parallel and dynamics, and then if you want to, I have it set up in 2 different ways. So right now it's set up to go to the mix channel, like the compressor, and you can see the key light is on for side chaining. I'll show you how I did the side chaining, because I think you may be confused on how to side chain through the drums, but it's pretty easy. Normally you just take the parallel and go into the dynamics of whatever you want to sidechain. So for this instance, the drum mixer is going into the mix channel. But since most of the sounds needed to be sidechained and not just the entire mix itself, I kind of did both. So right now you have the parallel going into a splitter, and then these are going to each device you have set up, and they can all be sidechained. So if you go to the mix channel, all of these keys can be turned on and sidechained if you want to, except for the drums obviously. But all you have to do is just adjust the amounts. And like you can see, the levels coming in. You can pretty much double sidechain if you want to, or just individually sidechain things and then turn off the sidechaining on the mix channel, and then just take it out of the dynamics here. So it's not doing the entire song, it's just doing whatever instrument you want. But for the most part, it felt like it needed to do double on some duties. So I have it set up on the the bass twice, I guess you could say, and then the mix channel itself is being sidechained, but it's only a little bit. So the entire song is a little bit being sidechained, but the bass itself is being double sidechained, because when you get the drums and bass going together, it gives it almost like a warp effect, or like that wub sound in like dubstep or anything like that, but it kind of bends the sound around the drums. And I think that's what you were going for. It just wasn't working the way that I think you kind of set it up, just kind of going into itself. So if you listen here, you can kind of hear when in the entire mix how the bass kind of warps around the drums now, instead of just kind of both coming out at the same time. And that's what it sounds like if it's off. It's just everything's coming out at the same time. Nothing's being sidechained, obviously, because it's not on, and it's just the drums, the synths, the leads, all the pads, everything's just being pushed out at once. But that's, I think, what you needed was sidechaining. So with it sidechained, sounds much better. Sorry if you couldn't hear me what I was saying there, but I was just saying, with it off, it does sound very flat and like everything's being forced and pushed out at the same time. But like I said, if you keep the sidechaining on, it keeps everything locked around the drums, and the drums have to come first, because the drums are doing the drums have the parallel. That's what's sending it out. So if you don't want to go that route, you can unplug the dynamics here. And then you have all your spiders set up here going directly to your dynamics on all the other ones. So all you have to do is go to each compressor, turn it on, and then adjust your amounts kind of like this one until you see the levels being adjusted, and then you should be good to go. If you have any other questions, yeah, let me know. This is fun. I've been in a little bit of a writer's block, so it was fun to kind of re-edit or remix somebody's song and kind of get my, creative mind flowing again. So thank you. And hopefully this was able to help. Have a good one.